Hello there. Today, I'm going to talk through some of my strategies for jump to Lightspeed sealed and pre-release events. A lot of these will be relevant in draft as well. But what I like to do when I'm looking at what my strategy should be when I'm prepping for pre-release events is I just like to go to StarWarsUnlimited.com, go to the card database, and basically run some filters that are going to help me figure out what's really, really strong in this set. So I filtered to jump to Lightspeed, and one of the things that I find most interesting about this set is that almost everything is in space. So I'm actually really interested to know what are the biggest ground units that we have in this set. So I've just filtered this to basically 5 or more power units on the ground. And I think this is really interesting that there's not many of them, right? So green only has 2, one of which is Chewbacca, which is a special rarity. So there's a chance that you can pull a hyperspace Chewbacca, but basically green has no presence on the ground. You can see blue literally has no presence on the ground in terms of big sticky units. Yellow has a few units, but Moff Gideon is a rare. So is Boba Fett, so you can't really count on getting either of them. And unless you're playing double yellow, uh, Mandalorians can be pretty expensive to come in at a 5/6. So you do have the Shadowed Hover Tank at a 5/3, which is quite good. But what I'm taking away from this is that red really has the opportunity to own the ground. Certainly, if you pull a legendary Darth Vader, you're probably going to play red anyhow. But I think it's worth saving him just to be a 7/7. You also have quite a few big units on the ground uh, in the form of Cam Syndulla here, and the insurgent saboteurs are really incredible. It's going to be pretty hard to get rid of these guys, especially if your opponent deploys their leader into the space arena. How are you going to deal with a 5 health unit that is also defeating your upgrades every attack? So this common unit uh, feels pretty insane to me in the sealed format. If you happen to get lucky and get all of these, I mean, you could just take over the ground. So this is really quite interesting. I think space is probably going to be a slugfest with so many big space units, but the ground I think certainly favors red in this format. So let's switch gears and let's look at space units instead of ground units. And we can expand our power range too. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take away some of the legendaries and rares because we can't really count on those in our packs. Oh, whoops. I only did legendaries and rares. Let's flip that. So we're going to look at uncommons and commons. Okay. Anything that's 5 power and up. And you can see pretty quickly what color is winning here, right? So blue and hero has double the presence, call it, of the rest of the colors. The Descartes cargo frigate is a little funky, I think, because it actually gets less powerful for each damage on it. So really not quite as strong as something like the Fleet Interdictor, which is a 6/6 that can defeat a space unit that costs 3 or less when it dies, right? You also have Chimera, and you have some of these big bombs that are neutral. But here, we can see that yellow is not super well represented when it comes to common and uncommon big ships. Green also doesn't do super well, just the MC-30 assault frigate. And red only has the rebellious hammerhead, right? Now we can expand this a little bit. Let's include cards that cost 4, or I'm sorry, that have 4 power, because you'll see that some of them are actually pretty strong, right? So the Banshee is quite strong. This almost has more than 4 power because if it's damaged on attack, it can deal that amount of damage to an enemy unit. So certainly super strong if you can get a pilot on this. We have a couple more, neutral blue cards here that have reasonable stats. Uh, the resupply carrier is certainly fun, though in sealed, I don't know that it'll be super, super strong because there just aren't a lot of giant bombs in the set unless you get a rare or a legendary. Okay. You can see what red got on the ground. It really misses in terms of the space. There's only 4 units with 4 or more power. And so I'm really thinking that I want red in my deck if I get one of those big hard-hitting ground units. And then I've got to make up for that probably with blue if I can get lucky enough to get some of these blue cards. Though you do see a few more yellow units pop in as well. The corporate light cruiser is going to be great. Essentially a 5/6 with ambush. That'll be really, really strong. Now, it is worth noting that there are so many pilots in the set that you can turn your little vehicles into big vehicles pretty easily. But I don't know that you'll be able to do that super consistently because it is going to be tough to establish dominance when everyone's trying to play little fighters and put pilots on them, right? That's what the set's going to be about. So I think some of these cards will be really, really valuable. I really like the Fleet Interdictor coming in and giving you a 2-for-1 and a Sentinel. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to scroll through the whole set and give you some general opinions on what could be strong if you're lucky enough to open it up in your packs. Let's start with leaders. I think there are, well, you know what? I still have a filter on here. I'm only looking at commons and uncommons. Okay. I love how easy this site is to use. All right. In terms of leaders, I think there are a few that make sense to stay away from. Cards like Phasma and Holdo are probably not going to be great because you're not going to open enough first order or resistance units to make them really sing. I also think Trench is probably a trap and sealed. Now, this is kind of counterintuitive almost because I just talked about how there's not a ton of big ground units. And so Trench seems attractive being able to come out as a 4 or 5 multiple times. The problem is you don't usually have a whole bunch of cards that you're going to use in your deck. It's not like running 50 card decks. And every time you reveal him, you're kind of milling your own deck, right? So he doesn't come out early. He's kind of a late game card. And milling yourself in a limited environment, it just doesn't seem right to me. I think Von Reg would be quite good deploying early and giving that +3/+3. That might be a really nice way to control the space arena. Rose, I think, will be quite strong as another way to make sure that you're getting some value from your space units, right? If you can take over space, you don't have to worry about those pesky red big ground units. The pilots that come out early will certainly be good. I think Rio will be quite good, coming out and giving a 3/5 to someone and Saboteur will be great. So I would probably prioritize those. Vonreg with some of those big ground units would be great. Um, Maybe Vonreg Blue would be what I would hope to draft based on what I'm looking at so far. So let's keep moving through the rest of the set here. Obviously, if you pull things like the Annihilator, it'd be fun to play, but I'm not sure that you can count on getting to 11 resources um, in uh, this format. Power from Praying could be really interesting as a source of surprise damage to kind of close out the game in this environment. Restore is pretty rare in this set, so if you play Hera on the ground, your opponent's going to have to deal with it. If you're able to keep Hera alive in space, maybe with like a Rose leader, that will be really pretty strong. I think Paige is also pretty strong in space as a way to build up a big unit. She combos pretty well with shielded units, right? Yularen will be strong. He's a rare, so I'm not sure that you can count on him. I think some of the blue cards that I really wanted to talk about are one, the Cloaked Star Viper. This thing has an insane amount of potential value. Certainly, if you can put a pilot unit on this, right? It's likely going to stay alive when you play it. Then you can pilot it up, and it'll hit like a truck. So that's one that I'd be very interested in getting. Let's see here. Both direct hit and out of the airlock are going to be super, super strong, right? So when we combine the fact that Blue has some really big bomb ships, it has plenty of little fighters to put pilots on, and it has most of the removal. I'm really, really liking Blue if I can get these cards, and that blue-red just to have a ground threat seems strong. Victor Leader could be really, really fun if you can take over space, for sure. It'll be strong. In general, I'm not as big of a fan of for green in this set. For sealed, Blue Leader will be one of the best cards. If I get Blue Leader, I may consider going green, just because it's that strong. It didn't show up in our ground search, but it is kind of a 5/5 ground unit, so that's great. Talked about Chewie. We probably won't be able to get him. Lots of big, exciting rares and legendaries that if I pull, I'd certainly be excited about playing them, but don't know that you can count on it. The Second Fleet Admiral, kind of fun on the ground. Not a ton of card draw in this set, so I'm not sure that you can bank on that experience very often. And then a decent amount of generic ships. Note the capital ships, right? So the MC30 Assault Frigate, and the Resupply Carrier. If you're trying to do a Piet deck, you'll want to make sure that you've got plenty of those capital ships, and those are some good commons. Air Superiority feels like a good one, but I'm not sure it'll be quite as good in a limited environment, because I think it's going to be dicey if you can get control of the space unit, right? So it'll be kind of a win more card, I think. Maybe can get you out of a pinch if your opponent drew those big red units on the ground and you didn't. But I'm a little hesitant on that one for this set. When we get into red, we've got some strong pilots. I like the aggro if I'm playing Von Reg, right? Certainly with the Interceptor, the Special Forces tie, the Prototype. Those will all be great options. But then the top end right, like we showed, is not quite as big. You're really probably switching your strategy. Keep your space units alive for as long as possible. Switch to the ground, and go nuts. The War Juggernaut is another sneaky one, right? This one didn't come up in our filtering, but this is probably going to be a pretty big unit because you can play it, deal damage to at least one of everything that your opponent controls. You can also damage itself, so it's a quasi 4/6, and could be way bigger than that. So it's another nice game ender, potentially a complement to the saboteurs here. That one is uncommon, so we can't bank on seeing it. But another reason why I'm liking red a lot. Okay, when we get into yellow, I think the deck's really going to have to come together. I do like the Techno Union transport, right? So the shielded 4/6 is nice. Can potentially get a 2-for-1 there. Maybe not if your opponent's big and shielded, but that's pretty useful. I Have You Now is a card to watch out for. Decent amount like Shoot First, though it doesn't have to kill the unit, right? So I would look for taking out a ship and leaving my ship, or a vehicle on the ground, either one. So that'll be an interesting card to watch out for. Lots of fun pilots. The Black Squadron Scout Wing is potentially a bit of a bomb in space for yellow. But in general, I'm not as excited to play yellow. I think Kaz has some interesting play, but I don't know that we can count on getting the hauler, and the fireball and the pieces that we want to come together for Kaz. Certainly, if I'm playing yellow, I'm looking to combo together a decent amount of these ships to make a play for space. Keep them alive with cards like I Have You Now, but it'll be a bit of a slog. And then we'll likely fill out our deck with these cards. Do you think it's worth noting that the Kassar TIE Carrier and the Jedi Light Cruiser are around? They're both common, so you should plan on seeing them in decks. They're formidable, and so be on the lookout for those. So that about sums up my thoughts. I'm really excited to see how Sealed goes. It's coming up at the end of this week, and I hope this was helpful. I'll be likely building something red-blue if I get lucky enough to pool those cards. Take care.